Hi, this is Jim Breon. Welcome to this YouTube channel where we discuss all things mental health. What I'm going to be talking about today is individuation. Individuation is a psychological term. Some people may be familiar with it, maybe other people not so much. What it is it's a concept that refers to a personal process that each person goes through in which you achieve a distinct, separate identity, separate from your family, separate from other people, and to some extent separate from the culture that you live in. It's really a concept that comes out of depth psychology or Jungian psychology, considered to be central to human development. It's an individual process that really is a journey towards understanding oneself and developing a solid and stable sense of oneself, including developing a stable personality. The process of individuation it's really a crucial element for people to go through. It can be stifled in some ways, and I'll talk about some ways that the process of individuation can be hampered and ways that you can also regain power over that process so that you can continue to move forward in healthy ways. Individuation is a process of becoming a unique individual with a sense of yourself, meaning a sense of what your needs, desires, dreams, goals, and purpose are. And the process begins in childhood and then ramps up in adolescence and really continues throughout the rest of our life. There's an added process of individuation that often happens in the second half of life when a person has sort of achieved certain goals, created certain things in their life, and then is seeking to find purpose in who am I outside of all of those contexts. And it really is part of a process of what we think of as self-actualization. So in childhood, individuation begins when a child starts to develop what we think of as healthy narcissism, an ability to stand up and ask for what they need, assert their needs, take pride in their abilities and their accomplishments. And then they also learn to integrate other people's needs into their lives as well. In adolescence, there's a real drive towards individuation, beginning with a teen's need for privacy. When they start hitting their teen years, they need to spend time by themselves. They need to spend time reflecting, self-reflecting, discovering themselves. Some parents will probably look at this process that teens go through and think it's sort of a self-absorption. And it certainly is a focus on oneself. They can appear egocentric due to the process that they're going through. But they're also going through a process of discovering who their tribe is, who their people are, so to speak. And part of that is differentiating themselves or individuating from their family of origin. This can often bring up difficulties with parents where they feel like, oh, they don't want to spend time with mom and dad so much anymore. And the peer group really does become really important. But this part of the process is really a very normal and necessary part of separating self from parents towards discovering my peer groups that I can connect with in my adult life. They tend to focus on their own concerns and might sometimes even appear to struggle to see other people's perspectives. But this is all part of the process. Part of individuation is, at this point, is often rebelling against norms, parental expectations, societal expectations, and developing your own interests, developing your own pathways in spirituality, politics, how you associate with other people, and changing and experimenting things like personal appearance and style. And in much the same way, adults go through periods of change when it comes to career and relationships. So let's talk about some of the impacts of individuation that's done in a healthy way, or maybe a lack of individuation. First of all, when a person doesn't go through that process of individuating, differentiating themselves, they can often end up suppressing emotions, their emerging authentic self, including their needs, their drives, and their desires, which can lead to struggles with mental health, anxiety, depression, problems forming a solid sense of oneself or a sense of identity. And then what starts to happen is people have poor boundaries where they can't assert themselves in a healthy way, fall into patterns of people-pleasing or appeasing, avoiding conflict. And what can happen is the person has a diminished sense of self-awareness or self-worth, including motivation and being able to set goals and achieve them. This can affect negatively a person's self-esteem and lead to self-doubt. Without a healthy sense of oneself, it can lead to depression and even existential crises where you're not quite sure who you are or where you fit in or what your meaning and purpose in life. And that's a huge part of the individuation process. People can struggle to understand where they fit in, may enter relationships where they have poor boundaries and can't assert themselves and where they don't get support. And what can happen is you can be stuck in relationships or series of relationships where people take advantage of you or where you forego your needs and desires in the service of serving someone else's. And we have to find a way of balancing those energies in life. So the process of individuation entails a number of different things. Part of it means making our unconscious material conscious, understanding some of our patterns and the reasons that we think and feel and do the things that we do, so that we can work on changing the things that need to be changed and integrating, accepting the things that need to be accepted. If we don't go through this process, then often our unconscious material can be relegated to the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we don't like or don't approve of or don't want to accept. They end up coming out in unconscious ways because we haven't integrated those things. Part of the individuation process is finding balance between the various parts of our psyche, balancing energies like masculine and feminine, relational and intuitive, and really integrating and accepting all the various parts of ourselves. And this leads to what looks like a more fully integrated and authentic human. What happens when individuation is hampered, such as growing up in a dysfunctional family where maybe there are emotionally immature parents or narcissistic parents or mental illness, addiction, trauma. What happens is compliance and conformity is valued way over individuation, and people aren't encouraged to grow to become their own individual. They have to comply and conform, and often this is done at the demand of people who can be abusive, either physically, verbally, emotionally. People aren't allowed to have their own thoughts and feelings, opinions and needs, and we can learn to suppress different parts of ourselves. What happens often is children growing up in situations like that develop internal healing fantasies about how one day they'll finally get love, acceptance, approval, and what they have to do in order to make that happen. And we can develop false versions of ourselves, or take on false selves or role selves in order to achieve those things. And what can happen is we grow up feeling shame and doubt instead of autonomy and personal power. So the process of individuation is something that's a really unique process to each person. It involves understanding our goals and our purpose in life. And there's a process we go through in the first half of life and in the second half of life. If you've struggled with that process of individuation, it really is never too late to start the process or reconnect to it. Sometimes in order to do that, we have to work through a lot of other issues that might be connected to family dysfunction, family of origin issues, trauma, and healing attachment wounds and relational wounds. It might involve first learning how to regulate your emotions and regulate your nervous system so that you can then do the work of continuing that individuation process and regaining a sense of personal power, not power over other people, but personal power. So you can develop greater authenticity and learn to trust yourself. And this really is a lifelong process. When people have a strong sense of themselves, they have that sense of their own personal power. They trust their own instinct, they trust themselves, and they can set healthy boundaries. And that's a crucial element in having healthy relationship and developing meaning and purpose in our lives. I hope the videos are helpful, and if so, I encourage you to like and subscribe, sign up for notifications so you can find out when more material is coming out. And until the next time we connect here, take care of yourself and take care of one another.